From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Protests continue across the country, responding to a Missouri grand jury's ruling in the shooting death of Michael Brown. And while trying to move forward from the case in Ferguson, police departments consider arming officers with cameras, a practice already underway here in Arizona. And later, we continue our Access Across Arizona coverage, traveling to Yuma County, where Border Patrol is broadening the territory it protects.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News. I'm Annalise Ortiz. Protesters hit the streets of Ferguson, Missouri and across the country after a grand jury decided that Officer Darren Wilson will not be charged in the death of Michael Brown. Violence on the streets of Ferguson followed after the decision of the grand jury. Police took control of the streets as protesters were seen vandalizing cars. Police fired tear gas to try and move the crowds. And across the country, angry protesters marched onto the freeway in Los Angeles, blocking traffic. Meanwhile, in D.C., hundreds marched to the White House in a peaceful protest. Now, in order to prevent another night of violence, Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has ordered more National Guards to the area. The protests in Ferguson are reviving the conversation on police accountability, specifically body cameras for officers. Cronkite News reporter Mackenzie Scott has thoughts from some leaders in Arizona law enforcement on this issue. Mackenzie?
What Michael Brown's family is asking for right now is change. And by requiring police officers to wear body cameras, they believe that change will come.
Under the microscope today more than ever.
Increased scrutiny since the shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown's family is now asking for law enforcement across the country to wear body cameras. And in Arizona, police officers are responding.
Are you wearing a camera? We are being second-guessed, we're being evaluated, we're being criticized, we're being scrutinized.
Arizona is a leader when it comes to law enforcement wearing body cameras. Cities in Arizona are already requiring their police officers to wear body cameras. Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery says transparency helps give the community a better understanding of what police do.
I think at the end of the day, obviously, the more that people are able to see, the more they're able to understand about the interactions between a police officer and a suspect.
But with that, Montgomery also thinks the technical challenges need to be addressed.
All that video, you've got to have a place to store it. Then you also have to have the means to be able to review it in order to provide it to defense teams and be able to continue to store that information as well for use in ongoing prosecutions. Details
that still need to be worked out to make the technology deliver that level of transparency. Taser is one company that produces body cameras and is actually based right in Scottsdale. Live in downtown Phoenix, Mackenzie Scott, Cronkite News.
Now, Cronkite News is offering a few platforms for all Arizonans to sound off on the fallout from the Ferguson decision. Our Public Insight Network Bureau is tracking the reaction and asking for your opinions. Here are our PIN correspondents Ihan Young and Dom DeFurio.
You may have seen some of the rioting, some of the destruction, some of the aftermath of the events in Ferguson last night. Ihan, you were down in Tempe. Tell me a little bit about what you saw.
That's right, Dom. I was out at Tempe Beach Park, and probably about an hour after the announcement was made, protesters started gathering. It was pretty small at first, probably about 10 people, and they were protesting in silence. But it quickly grew to about 60 people, and it got a little more intense. As they were marching across the park, there was a verbal argument between the group. One group wanted to be more peaceful, whilst the other group wanted to see some more violence that night, according to them. So the group splintered off to two groups. One went peacefully up north across the bridge, whereas the other group went towards the police department down in Tempe, and they were just shouting out more anti-police sentiments.
When organizing like this in the communities here in Arizona, that has prompted us to go to our viewers and ask you, what is your initial reaction to the events in Ferguson, and how do you see police interacting with members in your community? You look here to our query. You can come and you can give us some answers to some of these questions, tell us how you feel. You can find us on Facebook, and this query is going to be linked there. For the Public Insight Network Bureau, I'm Dominic DeFurio.
Now, the PIM Bureau has already received a number of responses. One participant says justice is served by definition. No one who did not see all the evidence presented has any right to comment on whether the decision is a correct one. And another respondent says while most people recognize the need to have police, there is a widespread sense that the police departments are out of control and lack appropriate discipline within the ranks. Now, if you would like, you can share your feedback at pimbureau.org. Now to the nation's capital, where Arizona's senior senator is weighing in on the resignation of Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. Cronkite News reporter Stephen Hicks is in our Washington, D.C. bureau. Stephen.
Thanks, Annalise. It's not unusual for Senator John McCain to take shots and disagree with the White House, and yesterday was no exception. Shortly after President Obama and Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel announced a mutual agreement, McCain said there were underlying factors that led to Hagel's resignation. Yesterday, President Obama called Hagel an exemplary defense secretary and someone he listened to behind closed doors. But just hours later at a book signing, McCain said he heard a different story from his friend Hagel.
It's obvious he was very frustrated because of the decision-making concerning our national security is exclusively within the White House, and he was not part of that, and it was very frustrating for him.
Now, McCain suggested former Senator Joe Lieberman or Senator Carl Levin to be the next secretary, but early published reports indicate that the president will go a different route. Some of the early names are Ashton Carter, the former Deputy Defense Secretary, Michelle Flournoy, the former Undersecretary of Defense, and Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, although Reed's office has indicated he's not interested in the job. Now, Obama is expected to announce a replacement sometime next week, but until then, Hagel has said he will remain on as Defense Secretary. We're live in the nation's capital. Stephen Hicks, Cronkite News.
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development estimates that nearly 50,000 veterans are currently homeless, with half of those vets suffering from a serious mental illness. Housing programs are helping to reduce this population in Phoenix. But as Michael Gordon reports, the battle to end veteran homelessness has yet to be won.
Homelessness is it's a hard thing to get out of.
Former Marine Greg Doyle spent 8 years on the streets of Phoenix, stuck in a cycle of drug abuse before finding the Victory Place Veterans community.
And it's been a blessing to have found this, they found me actually, so.
Despite signs of progress, Veterans Services Program Administrator Sean Price says that the war against veteran homelessness is far from over, especially for those with mental illness.
Every day we work hard at it is definitely a challenge. It's an ongoing effort, and it's getting to a point that you have all the resources in line and all the systems in place where a veteran does become homeless for, say, that it's very short-lived.
Housing communities like Victory Place have helped lower the number of homeless veterans in Phoenix, but for those vets suffering from severe mental illness, the help they need can often be the hardest to find.
Because the SMI doesn't keep them put where they need to be. It's a little harder for them to stabilize and stay put long enough for us to get them into the housing that they absolutely qualify for.
Victory Place recently broke ground on a new housing development that will add an additional 96 housing units, 30 of which will be used specifically to house homeless vets suffering from severe mental illnesses.
I would say that it still needs attention, by all means. It's not completely eradicated.
Doyle stays watchful for the vets dealing with mental illness that have been left behind, helping other former soldiers whose own personal wars still rage on. In Phoenix, Michael Gordon, Cronkite News.
Now, in order to help locate and stabilize veterans with SMI, Victory Place has instituted crisis intervention units and a 24/7 counseling service. Now let's go to Jacqueline Pulido with what's coming up on Cronkite News.
See how Border Patrol in Yuma County is enforcing the law of the land on the water. And bilingual programs in schools spread culture to students, but one program is also saving a native Arizona culture.
Who were the people that got us from there?
A world without glass, clean drinking water, time, or light.
To here.
These were hobbyists, garage inventors, and obsessive tinkerers. These are people who actually made the modern world, who set off an amazing chain reaction of ideas.
It's the story of How We Got to Now with Stephen Johnson, coming in October, only on PBS.
Cronkite News brings you access across Arizona.
News initiative Access Across Arizona in the most western part of the state. Reporter Megan Guthrie went to Yuma County, where Border Patrol agents are working both on the ground and in the water to keep people safe. Megan Guthrie joins us live from Yuma. Megan?
Yes, well, the topic of immigration is nothing new to Arizona and the city of Yuma. As Sierra Oshman reports, here, Border Patrol agents aren't afraid to get their feet wet.
When you think of Border Patrol, you may think of agents on the ground. Yet in Yuma, the boat unit patrols the river in an effort to deter illegal activity.
The river used to be a big corridor for human trafficking and drug smuggling.
The town is right on the border of California, Arizona, and Mexico. Here, the Colorado River runs along the north and west side of Yuma.
This is also a very active area for drug smuggling and human trafficking.
According to a study by the Congressional Research Service, apprehensions of unauthorized Mexican migrants in Yuma decreased by 95% between 2000 and 2013.
There's no doubt that we are a major deterrent for drug smuggling and human trafficking.
You look at 6-7 years ago, this area was getting overflooded by, illegals coming across, drug activity.
Officials of the Kishan tribe, which sits north of Yuma, say they feel safe with the boat unit nearby.
Yeah, we do need them, and they're quite an asset for being on the river.
Yuma agents are doing more than enforcing the law. They are also saving lives.
More and more people are coming out to do water-related activities. It's one way we assist civilians, not just the typical immigration-related work.
More traffic means more boat rescues. While the water may appear shallow, the depths can quickly change.
The water depth is very deceiving. Right now, the boat is in shallow water. However, just a few feet behind it, you're going to have 9, 12 feet of water.
At the end of the day, making civilians feel safe is a top priority.
We have to be here. We're major deterrents for drug smuggling, human trafficking. People were dying here.
24/7, this boat unit will continue to patrol the river. In Yuma, Sierra Oshman, Cronkite News.
Joining me today is Agent Santana from Yuma Border Patrol. Agent Santana, what makes the area we're standing in today so unique?
Well, this area is unique because you have the Colorado River, which serves as the international boundary between Mexico and the United States, but also serves as a state line between Arizona and California. And since our Yuma sector sends agents to patrol California and Arizona, our boat unit is an asset to us because they connect us from state to state.
Along with helping to deter illegal activity, you're also helping residents who may be harmed in the river. How are agents prepared to act in a medical emergency?
Well, the first thing that we're supposed to do is, the first thing that we do is we call our local emergency medical services to come and respond to the scene. But every vessel commander on the boat unit is a certified emergency medical technician, so they usually arrive on scene and render first aid.
Live in Yuma, Megan Guthrie, Cronkite News.
Now back to Annalise Ortiz with more Cronkite News next.
Public transit that's healthy for the body and the environment. And later, he's the backup quarterback who helped push the Sun Devils into the national spotlight this season. We get the backstory on Berkovici.
Brothers and sisters, can you tell me where to go?
The women were breaking the glass ceiling.
That just thrilled me. We're traveling back in time to help solve family mysteries.
No way! That's
amazing.
a new deal for the American people.
We wouldn't be who we are without them.
I just gotta get on back to my home at any cost.
Who were the people that got us from there?
A world without glass, clean drinking water, time, or light.
To here.
These were hobbyists, garage inventors, and obsessive tinkerers. These are people who actually made the modern world, who set off an amazing chain reaction of ideas.
It's the story of How We Got to Now with Stephen Johnson, coming in October, only on PBS.
I'm standing up for myself and for other people like me.
Wow.
This is a bit odd.
Are you okay?
It's kind of insane, but in a good way.
Reaching Arizona's communities uncovered by mainstream media. Discovering the untold stories of our state's women, men, children, and change makers.
We're taking a look at what's making news across Arizona.
This is the Cronkite News Initiative, Access Across Arizona. Live coverage of topics that matter and people who make a difference. Delivered to the homes of Arizona PBS viewers like you. Access Across Arizona is made possible by Women and Philanthropy.
Welcome back. There is a huge push to keep the traditional language alive in the Navajo Nation, particularly after a presidential candidate was kicked off the ballot because he was deemed not fluent in Navajo. Now, across the country, there are 566 federally recognized tribes, and the United Nations reports there are 174 separate languages in existence. But experts predict that by the year 2050, only 20 of those languages will still be spoken. The Navajo tribe wants to ensure their language is one of the 20 that survives. Representatives from the National Indian Education Association say culture and language go hand in hand.
It's how we did our ceremonies. It's how we pray. It's how we think of and know ourselves. It's how we relate to our land. It's how we relate to our children. All of those pieces are lost when we lose our language.
And of course, in order to keep the Navajo language alive, it needs to be passed on to the next generation. Cronkite News reporter Samantha Davis visited an immersive language program teaching Navajo to elementary school children.
In this class, you won't hear a lot of English. What does that mean?
Hello.
That's because at this magnet school in Flagstaff, Native American students are immersed in Navajo starting in kindergarten, in an effort to help revitalize a language that has a rapidly declining number of speakers.
Puente de Hosho is we're a trilingual school where students at the end of their time with us, the outcome that we hope for is that they are biliterate.
Instructors like Pamela White Hansen teach language arts, math, science, and social studies all in Navajo. The students spend part of the day in her class and part in an all-English class.
I was hired on as an English second grade teacher, but then they heard I was a fluent speaker. So when they asked me to teach Navajo, I couldn't read or write it. So I had to learn with the kids.
She teaches me lots and lots of Navajo, and she helps me get past stuff.
Delani.
Delani is not just Miss Hansen's student, but also her son. He is one of the lucky students who have a fluent, biliterate parent to help reinforce the language at home.
My sister and all my family help me understand the language.
The Navajo people have the most speakers out of Native American tribes in the U.S., but Dr. John Rayner, a professor at Northern Arizona University, says that Navajo as a language is still declining.
And what's really unfortunate is when you find the grandkids speak only English and the grandparents speak only Navajo, so you don't get, they can't communicate.
That makes the work at immersive revitalization programs like this one all the more important.
They also have an understanding that it's extremely important so that the language and the culture doesn't go away forever.
As part of their language classes, they're also learning about the history of the Navajo, so the traditions are kept alive as well. In Flagstaff, Samantha Davis, Cronkite News.
The city of Phoenix is hoping to change the ways of downtown transportation. Cronkite News reporter Jamie Warren tells us about some new green bikes and how you can hitch a ride on one. Jamie?
Some of those bikes are right across the roadway here on Central Avenue and Taylor Street in Civic Space Park. Now, this is a new program by the city of Phoenix that just launched today, and it's now available to the public.
Light rail, car, or bus. The city of Phoenix is launching a new, greener way to travel around downtown.
It's relaxing, it's detoxing, it's decompressing.
John Romero is a cyclist at heart and says that's why he got involved with Grid Bikes, a bicycle sharing program that allows anyone at any time to rent a bike and take it for a spin.
You pay at one of their kiosk stations or using your mobile phone. Then you punch in the code they give you, which unlocks the bike, and you're ready to ride.
The bikes are stationed all around the metro area and their locations are tracked online. After an hour, you can return the bike at one of its many posts around the city.
Super easy.
The bikes are an effort to help commuters.
Young professionals who realize that they would love to live a lifestyle in which they can live in an urban environment, utilize public transportation, utilize bikes, and use cars as little as possible.
And they can use those two wheels to get to areas around the light rail, not easily accessible with 2 feet.
Hopes to expand to Mesa and Tempe. Now, to sign up, cyclists can either pay for a monthly or yearly subscription, along with a standard rate of $5 an hour. Live in downtown Phoenix, Jamie Warren, Cronkite News.
Thanks, Jamie. Now, of course, it's been beautiful weather out for a bike ride. With a look at our forecast, here's Katrina Arroyos.
Well, I would definitely like to ride a bike in this weather. Currently here in the valley, we're sitting at 68 degrees. Down south in Tucson, 64. Up north, much cooler, 52 in Flagstaff and 49 at the Grand Canyon. These cold temperatures won't last long, though. An area of high pressure is making its way into Arizona from the southwest. Once that high pressure makes its way into the state, we're going to start seeing an increase in temperatures over the next few days. And that increase in temperatures will bring us to the 80s. On Thanksgiving, we're going to expect a temperature of 81 degrees. So you can take that turkey outside to carve it if you would like. But by Friday, we're going to drop down a couple of degrees down to 79 degrees. And speaking of Friday, for all you football fans, it's a big game. ASU versus U of A. They'll be battling it out on the field for the Tutorial Cup. So if you want to head down to Tucson to catch that game, you can expect temperatures to be around 78 degrees. Looking on out at our 5-day forecast, temperatures are going to be in the upper 70s. 79 degrees on Friday, 77 degrees into the weekend. For Cronkite Weather, I'm Katrina Arroyos.
A lot of football fans across the Pac-12 South will be glued to the TV this holiday weekend. Rivalry week is here and in full swing, and there are major championship and bowl game implications, both here in Arizona and in California. Let's send it live to Josh Franz in our Los Angeles bureau. Josh?
Thanks, Annalise. The winner of the Territorial Cup advances to the Pac-12 title game if Stanford is able to go into the Rose Bowl and upset UCLA. And yes, that's a big if, with a 9-2 UCLA team coming off a big win against the Trojans, hosting the 6-5 Stanford Cardinal. To make matters worse for Stanford, Ty Montgomery, the All-American receiver and kick returner, has been ruled out. Here's a golden nugget for you optimistic Arizona fans. UCLA has lost to Stanford 6 games in a row. And nobody will be rooting harder for nobody will be rooting harder for Stanford than Arizona State. One Sun Devil who is extremely thankful to be playing for ASU is Mike Bercovici. He was raised just over the hill in the San Fernando Valley, but the first school that recruited him was Arizona State. He's been a Sun Devil ever since and never looked back. But we do.
Oh, go kiddo, come on, honey. Look at you.
When Michael was real young, I had him play football for the Westlake Braves. They won what they call the PYFL Super Bowl. I was his offensive coordinator, but every time I'd call a play and we'd signal it from the sideline, he'd never call the play that I told him to because he was the manager. He knew what he wanted to do, and then he'd call whatever he wanted. And most of the time, his plays worked over mine.
Just waking up in the morning, having those 8 a.m. games, waking up, my dad would make me breakfast at 6 a.m., way too early to be up at 6 a.m. for being an 8-year-old or whatever the case is. But I know I'm a better play caller than my dad, but he'll never tell you that.
Calabasas, California, the town that plays host to Justin Bieber, The Rock, and the Kardashians,
is the same one that a certain ASU quarterback was born and raised in. With all of his material needs seemingly taken care of, what accounts for Mike Bercovici's ambition?
When you give him something to study or to learn, he's like a sponge. He will continue to learn until he perfects it.
Number 2, Michael Bercovici with the touchdown.
We would go to camps and there would be a kid that's 5 years older than him, and he'd get in their face and tell them what to do, like not shy in any way.
Michael started his high school career at Westlake, but transferred to Taft High School 2 games into his junior season. He wasn't getting any playing time.
It was the best moment in Michael's life. And that moment was playing for Matt Kerstetter at Taft High School. And I got to tell you, that changed everything for Michael.
I built a relationship with him unlike any coach I've ever had. I mean, I think I sacrificed every single one of my lunches in high school to meet with him and watch film and prepare for an opportunity like this.
As a senior, Michael broke 5 single-season Taft passing records. He graduated early and left for Tempe. After losing the quarterback battle to Taylor Kelly as a freshman, supposed experts thought Michael might transfer, but his loyalty to the Sun Devils prevailed.
He said, "Dad, here's what I think. I would rather play for ASU for 1 year than play for anyone else in the country."
With a Hail Mary win over USC in the Coliseum and a victory over Stanford's nationally ranked number 2 defense, his heroics seem like something from a Hollywood script. But for Michael Bercovici, it's just part of his story.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Find top Arizona stories anytime at CronkiteNewsOnline.com.